Hi, can everyone hear me? I can't hear anything in my headphones, so. I just saw Katherine Center. Let me find her. I hope everyone is having a wonderful September 1st. It's crazy how it's September already. Hi!
Hi!
Oh, well, these obviously don't work. I'll
Oh,
take my headphones out.
hi!
Hi.
Is this good? It's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you too. It's so nice to chat with a fellow Texan. And I
Yes!
love the color. Oh my gosh, you have the best colors. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Your color palette is so fun.
I painted this in 2020 when the book I had that was coming out that summer got canceled for the pandemic. Like the book didn't get canceled,
Oh,
but the book tour, the book tour got
yeah.
canceled. And so I just thought, well, this is very sad. So I thought I would paint something really joyful while we did Zoom events.
Oh, I love it. That is amazing. Yeah, I've really loved watching your social posts because they're always like full of color, and I love like you have this beautiful armoire or dresser and you were like cleaning and like all of like, your color palette is like it's so whimsical and so fun, and it's like very similar to your book color palette, which is I find just really fun and joyful, and it reminds me of your books, which are so fun and so sweet and romantic, and they really are. I was gonna say that they're the perfect um, end of summer book, but they're honestly the perfect anything book. I've really enjoyed reading them. Like every one that I've read has just like it makes me smile, like just talking about your book. So I'm really honored that you're here to talk about.
Thank you. That's also great. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? I mean, life is hard and we're all just like muddling through and figuring it out. And, I'm just all about anything that we can do to kind of make things a little bit better, and if that's adding a splash of color, that seems like a good idea. Or if it's like cracking jokes, right? Even in the
Yeah.
midst of stuff that's not very fun, I'm kind of all about like making things better however we can.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying that. And you do. I feel like you great. You the books that I've read The Bodyguard, and I've read Happiness for Beginners, and I'm just reading Things That You Save in the Fire.
Oh,
And I'll kind of start with like a little bit of a conundrum or this sort of crossroads situation, and always have great humor and anecdotes, and so much fun. I would love to talk a little bit about that, but first I would love to also talk about The Bodyguard and how that started in those crossroads. What inspired you to write The Bodyguard?
well, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, it was my pandemic book, right? It was the book I was writing in the weirdest, grayest parts of the pandemic back early on when I was like not feeling super optimistic about like
Yeah,
humanity's chances, right? I was like, we're definitely all gonna die. Like that just seems like a given.
yeah, yeah.
And
Similar.
yeah, I mean, I was just looking around like, we are gonna mess this up so bad. And every night I would like climb into bed with my husband and I would be like, well, it's been a real pleasure being married to you. I have really enjoyed our time together. We will be dead in the morning. So,
Oh God.
um, thank you for your service. I mean, that was like every night. I just went to like a very dark place with it, like very quickly, and,
Yeah.
kind of stayed there. And at the same time, I had a book to write. So it was kind of this funny question of like, okay, given that this is like the end of the world, like what kind of book do you want to write in that moment? And to me, it just seemed very, very clear that I wanted to write in the face of all of that, like the sweetest, swooniest, funniest, most hopeful, most romantic book that I could possibly like summon up out of myself.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I mean, it was the thing that got me through the pandemic. I so loved being around these characters. They cracked me up. Whenever my brain needed somewhere like sunshiny to go, I would think about the story and, kind of mentally wander out to the ranch and be like, what are these guys up to? So
Yeah.
it was like a conscious choice to kind of choose joy and comedy and love and hope in the midst of everything weird. So that was a big part of it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so cool. I loved that, and it does conjure up such joy. I mean, every moment I was every page. It's like, what's gonna happen? Poor Helen. Like, what's going on? Um, so the ranch is part of this, well, obviously is a big backdrop of the story, and I saw on your social that it was inspired by your own family ranch. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really true. So yeah, so like, you know, he's a famous actor and she's a bodyguard, and those are not the most common jobs in the world. So that sort of part of the story is kind of like high fantasy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But the ranch part of it, like maybe for another writer, that would also kind of be like high fantasy. But for me, it's very authentic and very real, because the ranch that the Stapletons have in the story is basically my grandparents' ranch. Like our family has a working cattle ranch outside of Houston. Mm-hmm. My mom crossbreeds Herefords and Brahmas, you know, and makes a little thing called an F1 cross. I'm like, they need to rebrand. That's not a very good name. But so, and it was my grandparents' place. They both passed away. And so my mom kind of took it over and she sort of runs it. Wow. But she lives in Houston, so she runs it remotely, and she's 80, right? So she's not, you know, out there like, you know, wrangling cattle or anything. Amazing. But yeah, so we're out there all the time. We spend every Thanksgiving out there. We like gather up everybody we love and everybody we like and haul down there. And I've been going there since I was born, you know, and so I really felt like for me, the ranch is a very, very comforting, beautiful, happy place. And I have a ton of memories from being a kid out at the ranch, you know, because the Stapletons' house is my grandparents' house. Like I just mentally in my own head, I just put it right there, right? Yeah. And so, you know, when I spent the most time in that house was when I was little, back when I kind of thought that the grown-ups of the world knew what they were doing.
Right.
You know, and then you grow up and you realize nobody knows what they're doing. But like, yeah, so for me, it was really kind of comforting to go back to that place. So sort of mentally like travel, but also kind of time travel and hang out in this house where I felt so safe and comforted and loved, right? And then just set a story there. At the time that I was writing the book, I had not been in the house for a while because after my grandparents died, my mom started renting that house out. But it has since opened up and we've gone back down there. My mom and my sister are actually fixing it up. And when I go down there now, like my memories of like Jack Stapleton and Hannah and the Stapletons are stronger than my actual real life memories when I walk around.
I love it. Well, I felt so comfortable in that home. It felt like comfort, and it's wild that I keep calling her Helen. It's Hannah.
It's Hannah. Yeah, it's Hannah.
Sorry, I'm like Helen.
I think that's because you read Happiness.
I just read. Yes, sorry everyone for the confusion. I love Helen as well. But no, Hannah, when Hannah, and Hannah's supposed to provide comfort, obviously, for Jack. So it was really funny watching that dynamic. I want to talk a little bit about writing a female protagonist that is a bodyguard, because that was something I found really unexpected, but I felt like you really brought her to life in a very real way. That is something that I wasn't expecting. I expect, you know, like someone who's very, a typical bodyguard, you know, like big, strong dude. And to see someone that was unassuming and that you wouldn't expect was really fun and very delightful to read. So how did you come to that conclusion? How did you write her?
So that's such a great question. So that was actually kind of the kernel where the story started, because somewhere back in the midst of time, I heard some podcast somewhere about how women bodyguards are actually in pretty high demand because nobody ever thinks they're the bodyguard, right? Like when you see like a woman walking in an entourage, you just assume she's the nanny or something. And so something about that idea of how like being underestimated can kind of work in your favor kind of stuck with me. And I thought that's like a really interesting job, you know? So it went back in there. There's a whole like, I don't know, pantry of stuff in the back of my head of things that, you know, when I hear about them, because ideas are kind of like butterflies, right? They're just fluttering around and you kind of catch them. I put them back there and then see if they ever turn into anything. So I did, but I was very nervous to write about a bodyguard because that is very different from my life, you know, like I spend most of my time in my pajamas with like fuzzy slippers and just sort of wandering around the house. I am not a tough guy on any level. And so I was kind of like, I really felt the pressure to sort of get it right. And so I did a ton of research. I read a bunch of books. I listened to this podcast about executive protection, and I would just like, I got kind of like obsessed with it. I would listen to it all the time making dinner. And I took as many notes as I possibly could. I definitely am a person who like dives in really deep on the research before I start writing, because I don't want to get it wrong. You know, I think we've all had that experience where you're like loving a story and you're reading along, and then all of a sudden you like slam sort of face first into some detail that's like totally wrong, and you know it's wrong, and you're like, oh, wait a second, none of this is true, right? And you know, I hate that feeling as a reader, and I never want to do that to anybody as a writer, so I really try to get it right. That said, you can't get everything right. You're gonna mess something up, but for the most part.
But there are those obvious nuggets. There happens sometimes in acting where there's something that comes up, and as an actor, you kind of have to. It's different being in charge when you get to be the writer, but sometimes when you're acting and you're like, I don't know how to make this believable. This would never happen. And yeah, and it happens also in writing or in reading, when you read something and you're confronted with like, wait, I thought this was real, and now I have to suspend my belief, and it's totally different books. Or
yeah, and it just totally slams on the brakes for you.
Yeah,
you have to like start all over, right?
Yeah,
or not. You know, God forbid you set it down and never pick it back up, which is a writer's worst nightmare, right? So I always try really hard to get it right. So yeah. And then the other thing I'll say about Hannah is she's definitely like very professional, very on top of things, like a lot of women that we all know.
Yeah, I feel like we have to overcompensate in that way often. So it definitely made sense being the bodyguard, having to do that and be
exactly.
Way.
Yeah, but also I think she's got these sort of humanizing other elements that are really more like me. Like that's the goofy parts of Hannah are the parts that are like me, because I'm just like a big goofball. And so I love the idea of taking a person who's very professional and very on top of her game and kind of like untouchable in a lot of ways, and then putting her in a situation where she's just totally out of her wheelhouse, right? Not in her comfort zone. Yeah. Everything is weird and hard for her. Even just having to sit still is hard for her in that situation. Yeah. So it kind of like creates these cracks in the surface that kind of, you know, let the light in, so to speak. So it's good for her, you know. I love stories about people who get knocked down by life and have to figure out how to get back up. Like that's my favorite kind of story. And that's really what this kind of is.
And you're so good at writing them. They really just light me up. And your protagonists just have that ability to really take something that's really challenging and frustrating or hard and overcome it. And it's such a joy to read those stories and so much fun. Was there a particular part in the story that you loved, like in The Bodyguard, that you really loved, and was there one that was really challenging?
I love all the parts where Jack and Hannah are goofing around with each other and like bantering, teasing each other, where she's making him laugh, when he's making fun of her nightgown and telling her she looks like she's a Victorian child. The way
sounds like my husband. He does the same. He's like, are you gonna wear that to bed? Yep.
Yeah, you know, I just love that kind of easy teasing. You know, my husband is a great teaser. Like he's like a championship teaser, because he never teases you about something that you are like tender about. He only teases you about like fun stuff, maybe even stuff that you're like kind of secretly proud of or whatever. Yeah. Like that's when he kind of comes after you.
It's like a love language.
Yeah, there's like an art to it, right? Where, and what I love about teasing is that if it's done the right way, it can be all about how you're kind of like seeing this person, like really seeing, really noticing and kind of getting them in this sort of special way that's not like anybody else. Yeah. And I think that's how Jack is with Hannah. Like he just gets her and he likes everything about her, and you could just feel him enjoying being around her. Yeah. And the same back, like she enjoys being around him. So yeah, I loved all that stuff. That was, and you know, usually when I write a book, just stop me if I keep talking too long.
I love it.
So usually when I write a book, I try to think of it as kind of like this is a bit of an exaggeration, but sort of like half tragedy, half comedy, right? There's always something hard that I make the main character go through, even though I don't really ever want to do that to anybody. And part of the reason that I do it is because the hard things that we go through in life, that's where the wisdom comes from, right? That's where we learn how to be resilient. That's how we define what really matters. You know, that's how we get better and stronger and wiser. So I think that stuff is really important, and I value it. So I always force myself to put that in there. But then the other side of the story, the other half of the story is always like the fun stuff, right? The comedy, the falling in love, the joking around, the bantering, the acting like goofballs, the dance parties in the kitchen, because I love that stuff too, right? And I don't think I would ever want to write a book that was all life lessons or like all suffering. Yeah, and the literary world has that taken care of. They don't need me to do that for them. There's plenty of that out in the world.
All the depressing stuff, yes.
It's all out there. That's good. But what I'm trying to do is like value the hardship, but also value like the joy and the play and the comedy and the moments when we kind of stand up and become the best versions of ourselves or look after each other. The good stuff too. So I'm trying to do both. But with The Bodyguard, I definitely leaned very, very hard on the good stuff.
Yeah. No,
you know,
it's incredibly rewarding to read.
I mean, like during the pandemic, I was like, do I really have to make this character suffer? I mean, aren't we all suffering enough? Like, maybe we can like go light on the suffering. So it's a little bit lighter of a book, I think, than I usually do. But it was, you know, it was what I needed, you know, as a reader, as like a human, right then.
That is awesome. What a great thing to write for yourself. I love that. Do you often do that? Do you write books that you want to read, or is it just something that like comes to you?
I think that's the only compass that you can use as a writer. Like you have to write, like if you had a free Saturday and a fuzzy blanket and like a hot cup of tea, like you have to write the book that you would love to read. Like honestly, truly, not like the book that you think your high school English teacher would want you to read, or like, you know, the book that like your friend who's like way more literary than you would want to read. Like you have to be, you know, I think that like you have to be really honest about what you love, and then you have to write what you love.
Right.
I love comedy, and I love romance and swooniness, and I also love wisdom. You know, I love all those things. But I think when I was younger, you know, I took a very literary path kind of early on. I went to grad school and got a master's in fiction, and I went to Vassar College for undergraduate, and it was all very literary. And I was trying to be like a serious writer, and I didn't let myself goof around very much. And it really wasn't until I became more true to what I actually like in stories that my stories got better, you know, as I got older.
And maybe that's why you're so prolific as well, because you love so much, you know, you love what you do.
Because it's fun. Because it's really fun. If you're writing what you love, you are like chomping at the bit to do your next book, which I totally am right now. I'm about to start a new one for summer 2024, and I can like hardly wait. In fact, I was literally, before starting this today, I was like dialogue was coming into my head, and I was jotting it down really fast so I wouldn't forget it.
I love that. That is incredible. Oh my God, you are so prolific. Like, how do you? I mean, that's so amazing. Because so this is so, it resonates so well, because I was an English major, and I love to write, but I often feel like I have never published anything in my life, but just I always think of what you're saying, like for your literary friends or for somebody else, as opposed to like what really lights you up and fills your cup of tea. So I mean, it makes so much sense that you inject so much joy into your books, because they're so fun and so lovely to read, and it makes sense that you love these stories so much. And
I think it's easy to get derailed. I mean, I think stories are kind of a tricky thing, because on the one hand, they belong to all of us, right? We just live our lives in stories. We dream in stories. Our memories are stories. We tell stories all the time to our friends. So we own them in like from birth. Humans just are like, that's what we do. We're a storytelling creature. But at the same time, it's also an academic subject that you have to do in school. And there's, I think, something about that moment, maybe in high school, when it like reading becomes work instead of play. It becomes this academic thing, and you're studying your words. You've got to take the SAT, and you're getting graded on your paper, where it kind of can suck the joy out of it And I appreciate, like, as an English major and former English teacher, like, I appreciate the academic side of it, but I think it's so important in life to give yourself permission to not let go of the joy, right? To just read what you want to read, and read for pleasure, and read for fun and for comfort. Like, I think sometimes we, like, in high school, we get derailed and we go all head about English, and we forget about the heart part of it. And the heart part's the best part, right? Yeah. I mean, the head's just there to help out the heart. So yeah, it's, but you have to kind of give yourself that permission, I think, as an adult, to just be like, I'm going to read what I want to read. Yeah. And I'm not going to worry about, you know, the ghost of my high school English teacher. Yeah. I'm just going to do it.
I'm going to end my sentence with a preposition. It's just going to happen.
Woo!
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, in those books that you come back to over and over again, I mean, those are just like totally your books, which I love. And you've been called the reading queen of comfort reads. What are your comforts? Like, what are the things that you turn to, either books, or are there authors? Are there things like a walk? You know, what are the things that are comfort?
That's such a great question. The first thing popping into my head is that I took a line dancing class with my daughter this summer.
How fun!
And I am terrible at it, but it's also so much fun.
So I feel like it's a staple in Texas. You have to learn.
Yeah. I think dancing, music, beautiful things, whether it's like, I don't know, antique salt and pepper shakers, or, you know, like pretty linens, or art that somebody's making on Instagram that I'm like scrolling through their reels and going, this is incredible. Goofing around with people, laughing, eating. Yeah. I mean, Texas is a good state for eating.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I think I'm just all about sort of like comforts, warm baths, fuzzy blankets, big swoopy like robes to wear around the house all the time. I bought a lot of robes during the pandemic. I was like, this is going to solve this. I'm going to have a lot of robes.
Same, I know. And the fuzzy ones to like the down blanket ones to like the Texas ones that you can wear out and get the mail because it's so hot here. Totally agree with that. Okay, so sorry, I'm derailed. So comforts, but then what are also, do you have books that you turn to that's a comfort, or are there certain reads that you're like, I need to reread that and for a pick me up? Or
so Jane Austen's Persuasion is my favorite from like way back from high school. And I love it because there is so much fun agony in that story, right? I mean, it's such a love story. And she has, you know, she broke up with him because, you know, her mom's friend told her he wasn't a good prospect, and, you know, she was going to live in poverty. So she dumps him. And then he comes back years later and he's rich and he's successful, right? And he's been in the Navy, and now he's like dashing and gorgeous, and everybody in the neighborhood wants to marry him, and she broke his heart. And then they get like forced into proximity and they have to be around each other all the time. And she's just in so much agony, but like in the most fun way, because it's Jane Austen, and you know she's not going to break your heart, right? You know it's going to be a opinion. So I'm going to have to examine this at some point, because there is something about seeing a character in like love agony that is so much fun for me. Yeah. And I think it's partly because, you know, it's going to get better. Like, you know, she's going to
get the payoff.
Yeah. In the end, she's going to get to that happy ending. So that's a big one that I reread often. It's like very kind of, I don't know, weirdly special to me.
Cool.
I discovered, I am on the hunt now for like people who do romantic comedy stories, like just beautifully, that are really, really funny. And I discovered Emily Henry during the pandemic. I think a lot of people discovered her during the pandemic. And I also discovered Christina Lauren during the pandemic. And they both of those, and Christina Lauren are two friends, Christina and Lauren, who write together. Okay. So all three of those writers, they're great. They have a book called The Unhoneymooners that I actually put in The Bodyguard. It's one of the sort of fictional movies that Jack Stapleton starred in.
yes, where he had to like make out with the girl, and he's like, oh, maybe Kennedy was in it. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I made a fictional universe where there's a movie version of that book that I love in real life that Jack Stapleton starred in.
I love it. That's so sweet.
Yeah, but I love stories that are both funny and heartbreaking. Like if you can find that sort of sweet spot of like bittersweet, where it kind of, because I feel like a love story, it needs to crack you open a little bit if it's going to get inside your heart and like mean something to you. So that's what I always am looking for, is I want to have my heart broken a little bit in a story, and then I want to put back together by the end. But
yeah,
I want to, like, I feel like there's something about that that makes the joy even sweeter when you kind of have let yourself feel the pain of it all first. So, and they all do that. So I love those writers.
yeah, I love that. I love when you get a good payoff. You know, I mean, a good heartbreak is also good, but I really love when you go through the journey with someone and you know, like, you just, like, I honestly didn't know if Jack and Hannah were gonna get together, because there was that moment, you know, like when I don't want to ruin it, but there's that tension that happened at the very end, and I was like, oh no, it's not gonna happen. And so it's lovely to get the payoff. It makes me so happy. Now you have two books that are being made. One was just made, and then one is being made right now into movie, right? That Happiness for Beginners is being made right now, which I'm so excited. I really loved that book. I really love Happiness for Beginners. I'm an outdoors person, so I was like reading it on a camping trip, and I was like, oh my God, I am like having so much fun watching reading my book. If you could make The Bodyguard into a book, who would you cast?
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question. Well, I mean, I would take a Hemsworth, obviously. I would never.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've actually heard so many great suggestions, you know, for just like diverse casting, or like casting, like, you know, well, let me back up and say, this book is called The Bodyguard, but it was not called The Bodyguard until after I wrote it.
Oh, really?
Right.
What
it
was
had a totally different working title. So I knew that I was writing a story about a woman bodyguard, and I knew that I had sort of gender flipped what we normally see in a bodyguard story. But I was not specifically trying to reference, you know, the Whitney Houston movie from the 90s, right? Sure. But I did love that movie back in the 90s. I mean, everybody did. But of course, now that it's called The Bodyguard, like, people are doing lots of comparing, which is always funny to me, because I'm like, well, that was definitely not in my head, but I love it. Yeah. So a lot of people have said, well, what if we, because Whitney Houston was a singer in the movie Being Protected, maybe we like get a real singer, you know, to play that role. It could be Shawn Mendes, you know.
Harry Styles.
It could be Harry Styles. I know. I was like, I would take any of those people very happily. So I'm not really picky, but what I have learned is that when the world actually makes a movie of one of your books, they don't really ask you, you know, as the writer. They're just like, we got this, thanks very much, which is great. I mean,
yeah, we want to take all of this and bye.
Yeah.
No.
You
need to be involved. You need to get involved with your stories.
When they made The Lost Husband, which was one of my books, into a movie that came out in 2020, they very sweetly invited me to come and do like a cameo, you know, in the movie. And I did that actually for Happiness for Beginners too. They've already filmed it, and I got to fly up there, and it was very exciting.
So fun. Did you film it in Vancouver?
They did not. They actually filmed it in Connecticut.
Oh, wow. Fun.
Because Ellie Kemper is starring in it. And yeah, she's going to be great. And she wanted to stay close to her kids. And
cool.
So they kept it right near where she lives. And so,
that's amazing.
So yeah, it was, but it was just this crazy thing of like, I kind of thought when I went to the set on The Lost Husband that, I don't know, I thought Josh Duhamel might, you know, want some pointers, or I wasn't sure what was it turns out actually no, nobody needs any pointers. They were like, yeah, we got this. We do this all the time.
I mean, I'm sure they can always use pointers, you know. could read lines with him. And no.
Yeah, I would have been happy to assist in any way. But yeah, for Happiness for Beginners, they cast Ellie Kemper to be Helen. They cast Luke Grimes, who's in Yellowstone, to be.
I love that. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I really, I mean, I love all your books. I just wasn't expecting to like be on a camping trip and reading a book about camping. So anyways.
I'm so glad that you loved it. That book came out before I had ever, hit the New York Times list or anything. And so there are a lot of people who don't know about that book yet. So it's, I'm always happy when people discover it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so fun. They're all, I mean, all of your books are so fun. That one just was so unexpected, being on a camping trip and reading about, this journey and learning so much about camping.
I think that's the perfect way to read that book. Like everybody who buys that book should also get a camping trip included.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And it's going to be such a pleasure watching it. The cast is amazing, and it's totally meant to be on the big screen. So that'll be so fun. As does The Bodyguard. So are there plans to
not yet. There's been lots of nibbles. I've had lots of like Zoom conversations with lots of different, like almost anybody you can think of. I've talked to them, but nothing has formally happened yet. So I keep crossing my fingers. I would love to see it as a movie. I mean, it feels like a movie in my head when I'm reading it. It feels like a movie. So
it totally does. It's very cinematic, very fun, and the location is amazing.
And yeah, I have a ranch available if they need a location.
Perfect. Okay, so you were just saying that you, when we were chatting in the beginning, you were talking about your notes and writing down your notes. So you're starting your next book.
Well, actually, so we're aiming for like a book a year on me. That I don't always make it to that. So like my first book that ever came out in 2007. So it's been like 15 years, and I just finished my 10th novel. So my 10th novel will come out next summer. So it's not quite a year, and this whole time I've been, raising little kids and doing all this stuff. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that one's already turned in. Next summer's book is done. And then I'm just starting summer 2024 book.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there's a lot of like delayed gratification. You write it and then a year later it comes out. Yeah.
Sure. Yes. I totally understand that with like, seems to be the case with a lot of artists with their work. You do it and then you have to wait a long time for the whole process. It's very like frustrating and fulfilling at the same time.
Yeah.
And what is that process like? Like, do you start out like for this next book? Are you, when you have dialogue in your head, is it like, oh, this would just be great dialogue, I'll figure out where it goes? Is it, I have this character and they're going to go on this journey. What does that look like for you? It just feels so effortless. I'm just in awe.
Thank you. Okay, so I never ever start a story until I have like probably 3 or 4 really big sort of elements of the plot kind of settled in my head. And I feel like that's the most important moment of writing a story, because you've got the right sort of big pieces to the story when, like if you take a magnet and you flip it around backwards and you try to press it together with another magnet, like they resist each other and they don't snap together.
Yeah.
Whatever that is in between those 2 magnets when they're resisting each other, whatever that tension is, that needs to exist between the pieces in your story. Like when you try to push them together, they need to kind of resist each other and have this kind of magic, this kind of energy in between them. And so, like in The Bodyguard, the fact that she's a lady bodyguard and he's the guy, there's a little bit of that energy to that reversal. Yeah. And then when she has to pretend to be his girlfriend, there's a little bit of that energy, right? Because now they've got a secret with each other, right? And when she gets forced to go and stay for 3 weeks on his parents' ranch and keep up that pretense the whole time, right? And sleep in his room in a 1-bed situation, all of that has that kind of energy to it. Yeah. And it when you try to put them together, you like feel it. You're like, okay, that's got that. Whatever that is, it's there. And if the thing is, if you put pieces together and they don't have that energy, you can never get it later. You know, there is no amount of like fancy language or fun dialogue that can fix if the ground floor doesn't have that, right? Yeah. Yeah, you can't fix it later. So you have to make sure that you've got the right elements to the story that are going to kind of create that spark that's going to light it up from the inside, because that's like how a story comes to life. And it's really, there's a lot of magic involved when that happens. Like, you can't necessarily just like make that happen through grunt work. You know, some of it is just like, you're like, okay, there's definitely energy here, and you get started and you're like, come on, come on, come on. Like, I hope it comes to life. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you try things and they just don't work.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, it's always like a little bit scary and you never know for sure. But I will say that the good signs when you're writing are if you just like cannot wait to do the research, can't wait to get back and read more about whatever the job of your person is, which is how I felt about Hannah. You know, I was so interested in her job and I was like, let me get back to this. Or like, also like for me, I know it's working when they won't stop talking right in here. Because, yeah, like not everything about writing stories is easy for me, but writing dialogue is super, super easy for me. I never have to try to write it. I never have to think about it. I just hear them. It's a little bit like being, you know, like being crazy because they're talking in there and I'm like doing dishes, right? And then I just like grab a paper towel and a crayon and I just start trying to jot it down before it disappears. So for me, most of writing dialogue is like taking dictation. I just hear them and I just type it all down.
That's amazing, because most people or most authors I find that I've spoken to have the hardest time with dialogue.
I've heard that a lot, and I think I'm the flip. I'm the reverse, because I think what I kind of think a lot about is like structure and like what's the kind of roller coaster shape of the story underneath all the dialogue and description. Like what's the skeleton of it underneath? Because that's harder for me, is to know like, okay, should we go to Mexico in chapter 3 or should we go to Alaska in chapter 7? You know, like I always have to think about that stuff really hard. So I've read a million books on how to structure a book, but I don't think I've ever read a book on how to write dialogue, because it just like, for whatever reason, that's the thing that's easy. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, I know I don't want to take too much of your time, but so I'll only ask you more questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay. I have no plan.
Okay.
I'm gonna be here all night.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience. Sure. There's someone who's saying that they're a young, aspiring author. Do you have any tips or motivation to help finish their book?
Finish their book. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think my best piece of advice to people who want to write, especially people just starting out, is you have to learn the art of self-encouragement. Like, you have to learn how to be like kind and nourishing and supportive to yourself. And you have to look for what you're doing right in a manuscript, because it's really easy to be hard on yourself. I think we're all really, really good at being hard on ourselves in lots and lots of ways. And with writing, that's especially true, right? Because you have to have that kind of editorial voice in your head that drives you to keep making it better and better and better. I don't want to say get rid of that voice, or like don't ever say to yourself, oh, this could be better. But I think you need to like support and nourish and like water so it can grow the voice that like notices what you're getting right and enjoys it and savors it and feels proud of it and is excited about it, right? Yeah. Like there's a lot of work involved in writing, but there's also a huge amount of play and joy and satisfaction that comes out of it. And I think you have to hold on to that with both hands, right? Because there's so much, I mean, wanting to be a writer, a professional writer, it's kind of a hard goal to set for yourself, right? It's not an easy path to take. The chances that it's going to work out are, I don't want to be discouraging, but they're not great. I mean, it's like a lot of work, and a lot of luck is involved. So you have to kind of hold on to the parts of it that are nourishing in the moment, right? If it's all about the end product of like, someday I'm going to have a bestseller and my high school boyfriend is going to regret dumping me, like that's my goal. Like, I mean, sure, that's nice, but what you have to kind of hold on to in the moment is the joy of like this thing that these two people just said to each other is hilarious, right? And that's where the happiness is. That's where the fun is. And like I write things all the time where like the very next day I get up and I'm brushing my teeth and it like pops into my head and I just start laughing, like I'll spit toothpaste all over the mirror. It's so funny. And, like the Victorian nightgown scene in The Bodyguard is one of those scenes that like after I wrote that scene, I was like, everything about that is funny to me. Like I just love that scene. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with like feeling proud of yourself, right? And there's nothing wrong with being like, I got this right. Because to be a writer, I think you have to do both. You have to say, this is really working and this is not working so well. I need to keep working on this. But ultimately, you know, sometimes people don't want to do edits or they're just so hard on themselves that they get discouraged and they quit. And that's the worst, right? Because the trick is to encourage yourself so you keep going, because that's the only way to get better is just like, you get better as a writer at about the same rate that your children grow. Like you don't really see it happening. You only turn around like 5 years later and you're like, oh, I'm so much better. Yeah. So yeah, so I think it's about just being sweet to yourself and like really savoring the stuff that's going right and like letting yourself feel proud and enjoy it. I think that's the trick to it all.
I've also heard a few authors say that they write a certain amount every day. Like, I think it's like someone was saying, I think 3,000 words or, you know, and just having that sort of routine and work ethic. Is that something that you find you do? And, or someone did ask, like, what is your work structure like, especially balancing being a mom and working? What's your routine like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am the opposite of that, what you just described. Yeah, so I don't write every day. I don't have any kind of routine. Like my husband's always joking that if you could like open up the side of my head, it's like there's like a tornado going around. There's like a cow by or like a chicken. Like
I love that.
Total chaos in there. I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what year it is. I mean, it's just very swirly inside here.
It's very creative.
It's super creative. And what I do is, I mean, the way that I write is that I just like fall in love with things. I fall in love with the stories that I'm writing and I get like very obsessed with them. And it's like the only thing I want to do is just write this story. And so I really do it in bursts. I don't do it like a job. It never feels like a job to me. But when I have a deadline but it is a job. And when I have a deadline coming and I know that I've got to turn, like this new book that I'm working on, I'm going to turn it in March. And so I know that between now and March, there are going to be like probably 5 different times when I'm going to leave town, drive down to Galveston Island, and spend like 4 or 5 days totally by myself in this little beach shack where you can see the ocean, kind of, if you squint. And I'll write for like 4 or 5 days all by myself. And what happens when I do that is that I can start writing in the morning, like make a pot of coffee, sit down with my laptop, and the next thing I know, it's pitch black outside. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I've been writing all day and I didn't even notice that time was passing.
That's awesome.
And then I'll come back, I'll write like 80 pages, you know, in a burst. And then I'll come back and I'm really not writing at all for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
But then when it's time to go back to Galveston, I take those 80 pages and I sit down and I read back through them with like fresh eyes. Mm-hmm. And then I can see it like the way the reader would see it or closer. And so then I make all kinds of edits on it. I enter those back in and then I write another, you know, 80 pages, 70, 80 pages. And then I take that home and forget about it. Like that's a really essential part of like my process is like, I've heard it called letting it drain. You just have to like get some distance and then come back to it. So I'll do that a bunch of times until I've got a first draft. And then I do it madly like a crazy person, but I'm always writing for love and for fun and for joy. I almost never do it. I never do anything in a kind of drudgery oriented way or like I'd never do anything by routine. It just doesn't work for me. I think it works for a lot of people. And if it works for you, great. You kind of have to find like your thing. But for me, just total human isolation seems to work the best.
Well, it also seems, I mean, it seems like you find the joy in a lot of things. So it seems like you seem like a very creative and joyful person. I mean, like, and being able to even paint the wall behind you because you had a spark of, you know, creativity. I mean, that's just, it's so beautiful. That's amazing to be able to work that way. I think you're one of the rare authors that I've spoken to who has this burst and this ability to really listen to themselves in a way that really ignites that creativity. I find that most authors that I've spoken to really, and there's no rhyme or reason or wrong way to write, but a lot of authors I've spoken to are, it's a job, this is how you do it, and then you throw half of it out, and then you keep going along this, you know, path, which for me seems very daunting and like scary. But hearing like that you're giving yourself permission to write in a way that sparks such joy and happiness, I think it makes a lot of sense, and why your books are such huge bestsellers, and why they're so fun to read, and why you can read them over and over again. I literally could read, I mean, I literally, you know, I loved The Bodyguard. I could totally read Happiness. I could read them all again tomorrow and get the same amount of joy, because you just have this infectious sort of like just complete delight. It's so rewarding. So that's a really beautiful, I love to hear that. I love hearing that you give yourself permission, that you listen to yourself that way.
I forget that my job is a job, because it is so much fun for me, and I'm so grateful to get to do it. And so like this summer, my daughter was home and she had a job working as a summer camp counselor in a rock gym. And my husband's a teacher, so he was off from school, so he was just home. And I was, you know, doing a ton of stuff that was book related. I mean, The Bodyguard came out this summer. But at one point this summer, I referred to myself in front of my kids as unemployed. My kids were like, oh my God, what? You have a job? I was like, oh, that's right. It just doesn't feel like a job. Like, it's so much fun. And like, you know, my husband will come home from like, you know, teaching middle schoolers all day, and he'll find me like in the bubble bath, and he'll be like, have you been here all day? And I'll be like, yeah, this is my job, man. I'm like reading a romance novel in the bubble bath. I'm working right now.
That is amazing. I love that. I think we all could use a little bit of joy, and like hearing that you're giving yourself permission. You know, like as a parent, I find I'm like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z and get this done first. And then it almost takes the fun out of it sometimes when you feel like this is a job and I have to behave like this. Like if you give yourself permission to do the things you love in the way that you love them, I think everything will probably fall into place a little bit better.
Well, I just have to say, I know I don't want to keep you forever, but I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, life has a lot of work in it. And I just really, really tried to balance that with as much play as possible. You know, like even being a mom, like when you're making your kids clean the house, they don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But if you like crank up the radio and like put on some really fun high energy music, it just makes it better. You're still working, right? But it just makes it better. And I think I try to do that sort of with everything, is like not to like ignore or pretend that the hard stuff isn't happening or that the work isn't work, but also just to amp up the volume on play and like goofing around and joy, and like to really notice that stuff and savor that stuff. I'm not naturally great at it, but I feel like I've spent my whole life really trying to get better at it. And at this point, you know, I'm pretty good at it, you know.
Yeah. That's I feel like at my house, I try to do the same thing, but my kids are going through this huge phase right now where they're just like totally embarrassed by me. Other than my kindergartner, who still likes me, my other two, my third and fifth grader, are like, oh, stop dancing.
That's hard. I know, that's so hard. It's really heartbreaking. You're like, no, I'm cool.
I know. Like, come on, you guys. Like, let's go. I'll even play music that you like. Let's go. But it's like, oh, Mom.
Yeah, that's rough. I'm really tenderhearted for that. I'm like, guys, be nice to me. I need everyone to be nice to me all the time.
Please. I know. Oh, this is such a delight. I am so grateful to spend this time with you, and I am so grateful to, you know, be able to pick up these books whenever I want and read your stories. Is there anything else that, you know, you'd like your audience or the audience to know, or any more anecdotes or?
Well, just a random one thing I'll say is that if you guys want to, no pressure, come and I've got a little mailing list that is really fun. It's called 3 Good Things, and it's basically like 4 times a year. I just, you know how I like fall in love with things? It's like things I've fallen in love with, I just put them in the newsletter because I don't have that much news. So it's like Here's a song I'm obsessed with. Here's a really great podcast. Here's a rom-com that I read and loved. It's just stuff.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Where do they find it?
So I have a website, katherinecenter.com, and there's a little tab that says newsletter, and you can try it, and if you like it, that's great. I think of it like joy for your inbox. But if you don't like it, it's really okay. I will never check. It won't hurt my feelings. You can try it for a little while, and then
I'll post it in my stories.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll sign up. I'm signing up.
Yay, that's awesome. Well, this has been such a treat for me. I could sit here all day. I'm like, let's talk first.
I so appreciate it. I mean, I have loved this chat, so I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for definitely like brightening up my day, and I can't wait to see more of what you do. I'm so excited.
Thank you. You're the best. This was such a good too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Bye. Happy weekend.
Yeah, you too.